He shouted, "Shark, shark, get out the water now."
For Olga Marcinko, floating on her back in the relaxing waters of the Red Sea was a moment she wished would never end. Egypt's Sharm El Sheikh was a perfect vacation, and she was enjoying every moment. Hands outstretched, Olga lazily began paddling back to shore. Suddenly, she felt something rough nudging her hand. The next moment, like a lightning bolt, a searing pain tore through her arm. When she turned, she was horrified to see a menacing shark trying to rip her arm away. Olga screamed and tried swimming away, but the shark attacked repeatedly. It chewed off her hand and tore away a chunk of her rear side, turning the sea red with Olga's blood. She managed to make it to safety, but not before she was severely injured and on the verge of death. Tragically, Olga wasn't the terrifying beast's only victim. Minutes later, 70-year-old Lyudmila Stoyarova was to suffer a similar fate in what turned out to be a bloody carnage at Sharm El Sheikh. Sharm El Sheikh, also known as Sharm, is an Egyptian paradise for adventure and water sports lovers. The coastal waters of the Red Sea are rich with a diverse underwater fauna of more than 1,000 types of exotic fish and 150 species of spectacular coral. The idyllic spot has long been a holiday destination for thousands of tourists worldwide. It is also among the world's best spots for snorkeling, diving, boating, parasailing, windsurfing, and canoeing. But even though it is bliss, Sharm El Sheikh can suddenly turn into a hunting ground for a killer, the white-tipped shark. Though you will be told it is all very safe, on that ill-fated day in December of 2010, it turned out to be a shark feeding frenzy of humans. On December 3rd, 48-year-old Olga Marcinko from Russia was enjoying a day at the beach in Sharm El Sheikh. Needing a well-deserved vacation from her hectic life back home, Olga and her 21-year-old daughter Elena were staying at the maritime resort and just could not wait to get their feet into the water. After a morning's refreshing swim and a lazy day at the beach, Olga and her daughter decided to go for one more dip into the sea just before lunch. Elena decided to stay closer to the beach, while Olga went further into the water. Olga had on swim fins, thinking she would have fun floating around. After all, she thought she had done enough swimming for the day. As Olga floated on her back, she looked up at the clear blue sky, and everything seemed perfect. Olga lazily outstretched both her arms, soaking in the moment. But then her hand touched something sharp, something rough, something just beneath the water. Before she could react, a knife-like stabbing pain shot through her arm. Try as she might, she couldn't even pull back. It was as if her hand was in a serrated vice. When she turned to look, all she saw was blood bubbling into the water. Her own blood. And from the red-soaked sea emerged a nightmare. The terrifying jaws of a shark latched onto her arm, trying to rip it off. Narrating her own ordeal, Olga said, "At first I thought it was a dolphin, but then I felt a sharp pain as it came up, sank its teeth into my arm, and began to wag me around." The shark was a white-tipped female. Now, white-tips are one of the deadliest sharks in the ocean and are extremely aggressive towards humans. They are notorious for their feeding frenzies and incredibly powerful bursts of speed. These are killing machines. The shark tried pulling Olga down, who was screaming in pain. She summoned all her strength to escape, and at that moment, the shark suddenly let go. Olga thought she was lucky and turned around to swim for the beach. It was 30 feet from the dock. Olga, now thrashing around in the water, began hitting the shark with her fins. She was in a panic and thought maybe this was it. How on earth was this happening? It was not supposed to be dangerous. The brochures all said shark attacks were rare, yet here was a huge white-tipped shark hell-bent on chewing her to bits. This time, the shark bit down on her left buttocks, tearing away the flesh. Elena, a distance away, saw her mother waving one arm frantically and knew instantly something had gone terribly wrong. She was horrified to see the water around her mother oozing blood, and then she saw the shark dragging Olga down. Elena then saw Olga surface again and heard her mother scream, "Help me, shark!" Olga swam as fast as she could, desperately motivated by Elena. The shark had ripped her hand off. All she could use was a bloody stump and one good hand to swim for her life. Luckily, she had on flippers, which helped propel her body faster with the shark close behind. It bit her again, taking a good chunk of her left thigh. It again bit at her arm, and this time wrenched it right off. The entire sea surrounding Olga had turned red, and by now, people had gathered at the dock, ready to help pull her out. When she reached the dock, men began hitting the shark with their fins. Out of sheer luck, Olga was saved and pulled up to safety. Olga was flown in a chopper to Cairo's Nassar Institute Hospital, with Elena by her side.
Она начала кричать: ой, ой, мамочки, мамочки, что это? Притопила ее, вот, и, видимо, оторвала ей руку в этот момент.
Olga's injuries were grievously severe. Her arm had to be amputated at the shoulder. In place of her left buttock was a deep gaping hole that made her spinal cord visible. Olga, covered in bandages, laid on her stomach the whole time. A furious and angry Elena raged on to reporters about how Egyptian authorities were to blame for failing to warn tourists about the dangers lurking in the Red Sea. Ironically, the area that both Olga and Elena chose to swim in was called Shark Bay, and the white tip that attacked Olga wasn't quite finished with humans just yet. It had tasted blood and was lurking around for more. The menacing shark looked for her next victim and found one in 70-year-old Lyudmila Stolyarova, also from Russia. Lyudmila was staying at the Coral Bay Resort with her husband, Vladimir Stolyarova, and like Olga, she thought of coming to Shark Bay for a swim and soaking in the sun. Lyudmila, who was a little more daring, strayed almost 131 feet from the shore. She was 32 feet from the same dock that rescued Olga. It was 2:55 p.m. local time, just 15 minutes after the attack on Olga, yet Lyudmila knew nothing. Had she been warned, she might have thought twice about going for a swim. Lyudmila invited her husband to swim with her, but Vladimir declined. Instead, he chose to read a book while sitting on the beach. Lyudmila was enjoying her swim, oblivious to the dangers around her. The white-tipped shark, a regular Jason Voorhees of the Red Sea, had attacked 5 people that day. Diving guide Hassan Ali would have been its 6th victim before Lyudmila, but good sense prevailed and the white tip left him alone. Instead, it was Hassan who had witnessed the brutal attack on Lyudmila. Hassan Ali had been diving in the bay with a client for 25 minutes. Just as he was about to surface, the white tip approached him. Hassan immediately assumed a vertical position, making him look bigger than the shark. The killer shark circled both guide and client several times before finally swimming over Hassan's head and darting upward toward Lyudmila on the surface. Hassan looked up and saw the shark torpedoing vertically at Lyudmila. Lyudmila never knew what hit her. All she felt was something grip her leg and propel her right out of the water. Before she could even fathom what was happening, Lyudmila stared in horror. Her foot was gone. In that one swift attack, the shark chomped it right off. All she could see was a stump at her ankle and blood filling the water. Hassan, from below, saw that Lyudmila's foot was gone. It was in the shark's mouth. The water then filled with blood, obscuring his vision. Hassan quickly surfaced and yelled for the other swimmers to flee the water. He then swam over to Lyudmila to save her. By now, Lyudmila had reached the dock. She was a strong swimmer and no shark would slaughter her that day. She was determined to save her own life, but the shark was hell-bent on another feast. The shark attacked repeatedly, even biting off her arm. Lyudmila was being eaten alive, but she kept on swimming. She kept defending herself from the shark with her left hand, but the pain of the bites on her fingers became unbearable. Just as she managed to get out of the water, the shark made one final lunge and grasped her forearm. Instantaneously, Lyudmila pulled back, which may have been her biggest mistake. The action tore the flesh off her arm right up to her elbow. All that was left was an elongated bone. Vladimir was still reading his book, unaware of the commotion that was going on, when suddenly he was rudely disturbed by a woman who rushed over towards him, wringing her hands and almost crying. She told him to run. Something terrible had happened to his wife. Vladimir rushed to the water and saw a dreadful scene. A man was carrying his wife on a sunbed. She was bleeding profusely and missing an arm and foot. It was Hassan who helped Lyudmila to shore and gave her first aid. Lyudmila was rushed to the same hospital as Olga, where doctors tried to save her life. She had suffered severe blood loss. Lyudmila's left foot, severed at the ankle, had to be amputated at the knee. After almost 2 weeks in the hospital, Lyudmila recovered in better condition than Olga. and could not wait to fly back to Russia for further treatment. The white-tipped shark that attacked both women was sighted again by divers in the same area, but surprisingly did nothing. Perhaps it had satiated its thirst for blood and had its fill. On December 7, 4 days after the attack, one man, Mohammed Salim, shared a disturbing video of divers feeding the same shark and angrily commented that the shark should never be fed in the area. In the 10 days that followed, sharks at Sharm mauled 2 more tourists and killed a 5th after the Egyptian authorities said the waters were safe. There were no signs to warn tourists, nor was the area cordoned off for safety. Do you think this was the right move? Was the Egyptian government more concerned with protecting its tourists' money? Our opinions are reserved, but another swimmer may just have a similar story to tell, shown on screen.